everyone, it's me, KatieBeth again, and welcome to Tuesday evening. And on today's Random Tuesday Roulette, the creator of Watch It While You Poop 2 has requested this video of me explaining what is a Cricut and what cool things can you do with it. And in case you're a little curious about the creator of Watch It While You Poop 2, I've put a link to his page down below in the description. He's into a bunch of nerd games, beer, and great adventures. Now, a Cricut is one of these machines here. I have the Cricut Explore Air, and I believe it's the first one that had Wi-Fi capabilities. Everyone before it, I believe, had to be directly connected, hardlined into the internet and to your computer. But this one is a few years old, so they have made a lot more improvements on newer ones. I believe this might be the last model that has the little cartridge thing. Once upon a time, you had to buy a cartridge and stick it in for the Cricut to know what to print. But now that everything's so internetized, you can kind of just pick a picture and have the Cricut machine make it black and white for you, and then it cuts out that shape. So I think I skimmed over it a little bit, but this Cricut machine is a machine that cuts shapes out. It cuts paper out. You can make cards, gift boxes, labels, car decals, window decals, or shapes to put on tumblers and cups. I didn't make this one of my friends did. It's absolutely beautiful. She did this with her Cricut machine, cut out these little shapes and got them on there. And because I didn't make this, I'll also put her link down below in the description if you wanted to know where it came from or how to get one. Or the thing I most commonly use the Cricut for is to make t-shirts. And there's a few ways to do it using your Cricut. This type, I used vinyl. So I had the design cut out with vinyl, and then you just iron it onto your t-shirt. But the disadvantage to the vinyl is that it doesn't always stretch the way the t-shirt does. Or the second way I make shirts and whatnot is through screen printing. And basically I use the Cricut to make a stencil and then paint through that stencil. So this is just paint on here. I'm actually going to make another batch of shirts tomorrow, so I have a screen printing stencil cut out. I am using a screen printing screen so that I can make a few of them. If you only want to make one t-shirt though, you don't actually need the screen, and you can just use the stencil you made and directly put the paint onto your shirt. But I'm using the screen printing screen just so I can make one, make another, so it makes it a little quicker. Building on screen printing, a really big thing right now is masks making, and I haven't personally tried using the Cricut to cut out the fabric for masks yet. But another one of my friends with Kayla's Cricut projects exclusively uses her Cricut to cut out her masks, so they're always the same each time, and it works really well for her with that. And if you're wondering about Kayla's Cricut projects, I'll also put a link down in the description below in case you want to check out some of her cool masks, and she also makes t-shirts. So building on t-shirt screen printing, I also do mask screen printing. So I did cut my mask out by hand just because it was easier for me at the time. But instead of just having a blank mask, you can also screen print on any type of writing you want on or any pictures. Like if you can't find fabric that has the green hearts that you want, you can Cricut green hearts onto your fabric, using either the paint screen printing method or just by using the vinyl iron-on type. And if you don't have a Cricut machine, you can still do all of these projects by cutting things out with an exacto-knife. Before I had a Cricut, I used to print out pictures, glue them to cardstock, cut the design out with an exacto-knife, then glue stick that cardstock onto shirts so that it would stay, and then I'd use spray paint or acrylic paint to get the picture on there that way. I believe I have a few videos of that type of DIY screen printing with no really extra tools, and I'll try to put a link up here on top, and if not, I'll still put it down in the description below, just a one-stop shop to find all the links. So basically, a Cricut just lets you make a bunch of projects a lot easier than cutting them out by hand. There are some disadvantages to this. One would be if you don't have Wi-Fi or internet access, you have to have a cable directly connecting from your computer to your Cricut machine. Mine still does that. I'm not sure if the new ones do. but I assume they should all have that capability still. Another huge disadvantage to the Cricut, but would also be a disadvantage if you were trying to do it by hand, cutting out with an exacto-knife, is that the Cricut doesn't cut little things out too well. Like this little font here is pretty much as small as my Cricut will do. Anything smaller than this, and it just doesn't cut well and it doesn't peel off well. So one of the limitations is size. And speaking of Cricut size limitations, it really can only cut things out that are 12 inches wide or smaller. So you do have a lot of limitations where you can't make complex images too small, and you really can't make images too big because they just won't fit on the screen. And you can buy mats that are a little longer than this, but it still limits you on how wide you can make it because it has to be able to fit through this machine here. So while the newer Cricut machines do talk about how they have fabric cutting abilities, remember your fabric can only be cut this wide, actually a little smaller because it needs to be able to fit on here well. So that kind of takes out any type of dressmaking capabilities unless your pattern is super small or you're cutting it into super small pieces. Another thing that is kind of expected but kind of still really irritating is that all of the Cricut accessories are super expensive. I have recently found that you can get t-shirt iron-on vinyl on Amazon for a lot cheaper than you can at Joann's or Michael's. A roll of iron-on vinyl to make these type of iron-on type of images is pretty expensive. For instance, the Cricut brand rolls you'll get at Michael's, you can make about 2 of these images with it, and it's about $14.99. So when you take the cost in of the shirt and the vinyl, you're really not saving too much more money than just buying a shirt, especially when you factor in all the time it takes. While the Cricut machine does cut images out a whole lot quicker than I ever could by hand, it still takes a while for them to cut images out. An image about this size and this detail takes about, I'd say like 5 to 7 minutes for this to get cut out. And if you're expecting to do something really quickly or in a hurry, it's really irritating just sitting there watching the machine cut while you're ready to craft. And aside from that, after it cuts this image out, you still have to peel away all of the pieces that you don't want on your image. For instance, when I peeled the vinyl off of this image was cut, but it still had all of these pieces in it. Like this clear part here was orange, and I had to take a pokey and kind of pick it off and then peel off all of these areas that I didn't want on my image. So again, even though it does make things a lot quicker, it still is very time consuming. And again, bringing up the cost of the accessories, the needle that the Cricut cuts with, the blade, always seems to run out at an unexpected time. So when I'm in the middle of trying to get a project done quickly, the blade will suddenly just not be cutting all the way through the vinyl. So I'll have it cut out like 10 items, and then I go to weed them, which is what you call when you peel off the pieces of the vinyl you don't want. And suddenly it barely scored the vinyl, just enough that you can't reuse the vinyl, but not enough to actually be useful. So sometimes I end up wasting a ton of expensive vinyl just because the blade is not sharp anymore and cut it out incorrectly. And there is no warning saying, hey, this blade isn't sharp anymore, so you kind of just have to keep an eye on it yourself. So that is another thing that I don't really enjoy when I have to babysit my Cricut machine. Also, the blades aren't that particularly cheap. A cheap blade is like $14, and the more expensive ones are like $26. And depending on how much stuff you're going to be making, depends on how often you'll have to change that blade out. Well, I hope this video was helpful, at least explaining a little bit on what a Cricut is and what it does. I also wanted to tell you some of the advantages and disadvantages of using it. I hope I was able to accomplish some of that. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great night.